Sitting here nursing this drink, just watching the ice slowly crack and melt in the glass, it really gets you thinking about structural integrity.
No, we're starting deep tonight, huh?
I mean, yeah. We have this built-in assumption, right? That the biggest, most indestructible things in the world can only be taken down by something equally massive.
Like a wrecking ball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You look at a skyscraper or like a concrete fortress or an empire and you assume it takes a hostile army or a literal earthquake.
Right.
But pull up a stool, because I was just reading through the sources for today's deep dive, and it completely dismantles that idea.
It really does.
We are looking at one of the most famous ancient legends out of China, but honestly, reading the translation, it doesn't feel like dusty ancient history at all.
No, not even a little bit.
It reads like this very dark, very modern, romantic tragedy about the ultimate toxic workplace. Just a sprawling bureaucracy that quietly spiraled out of control.
I mean, your read on the material isn't wrong. If we look past the mythological dressing, this story isn't really about a wall.
Yeah.
Or an ancient emperor, really. We are looking at the eternal grinding clash between massive state infrastructure and the incredibly fragile reality of personal happiness.
Yes, exactly that.
It is basically a case study in the friction between a system that only recognizes people as data points and the actual humans who are forced to live and die inside those spreadsheets.
That is exactly the vibe, because the climax of this story, and well, I'm just going to spoil the ending right now because the setup requires you to know where we're heading.
Fair enough.
It is about a single woman's tears acting as a literal demolition crew.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about a woman crying with such raw devastation that it brings down the ancient equivalent of a heavily fortified national border wall.
Which sounds completely absurd at first.
Right. On the surface, it sounds like a cartoon. But the emotional logic of it, the step-by-step bureaucratic nightmare that gets her to that point, is so brutally grounded. By the time the wall falls, you completely buy the physics of it.
You really do.
So to understand how we get there, we have to set the scene. And to do that, I need you to imagine the Qin Dynasty. But do not picture, guys in silk robes quoting poetry.
Definitely not.
Picture, like, a demonic, hyper-aggressive tech startup.
Okay, I actually have to push back on that analogy right away.
Oh, really? Why?
Because calling the Qin Dynasty a startup gives it this sheen of modern voluntary hustle culture that completely misrepresents the reality on the ground.
Okay, fair.
In a startup, you have equity, you have a ping pong table,
Mm-hmm.
and crucially, if the CEO goes completely crazy, you can just pack up your desk and quit.
Yeah, that's true. You couldn't exactly hand in your 2 weeks' notice to the emperor.
Right. The Qin Dynasty wasn't a startup. It was an inescapable monopolistic factory where the citizens were basically just fuel for the furnace.
Right.
It was zero exit strategy.
I like that better, an inescapable monopoly. So the CEO of this monopoly is Emperor Qin Shi Huang. If you read the standard history books, he is the visionary. He unified China, standardized the currency, weights, and measures.
The axle widths for the carts, too.
Right. He made all the cart axles the exact same width so they'd run smoothly on the imperial roads. From a management perspective, the guy looks like a genius.
On paper, yes.
But in the context of the people actually living under him, he is the ultimate toxic KPI maniac. He is obsessed with his key performance indicators at literally any cost.
Which is a very dangerous way to run a country.
Exactly. So the international market is volatile. You have these nomadic tribes, this Jiangnü, causing trouble up north. So the CEO looks at his map and decides, we need a massive, impenetrable border wall, and I want the deliverables yesterday.
And this is where we really have to look at the mechanisms of his success, not just the achievements.
Yeah.
Because when a leader standardizes weights and measures, it is a brilliant economic move. But the Qin philosophy, which is rooted in legalism, attempted to standardize human output the exact same way.
Like treating people as literal cogs.
Exactly. The emperor was completely disconnected from the ground floor. He didn't concern himself with the human cost of his deliverables.
Right.
The metric on his desk was simply miles of wall built. It was never, how many families were permanently destroyed to lay the foundation.
Which brings us to the actual labor. Like, how did this massive project get built? Because I think a lot of Americans today picture ancient monuments and vaguely assume it was a bunch of guys in tunics getting paid a day rate.
Right, like contractors.
Yeah, eager contractors grabbing overtime. But reading through these sources, man, I realized this was the most extreme, brutal version of the military draft mixed with eminent domain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when a city decides they need to put a new 8-lane freeway right through a historic neighborhood,
Okay.
the government holds press conferences. They call it necessary urban renewal or vital national security infrastructure. They talk about the greater good.
But for the residents, it's a totally different story.
Exactly. To the guy whose living room is about to become a passing lane, it is just a forced eviction. It's a bulldozed life. Now multiply that by 1,000,000 and make the labor compulsory.
Yeah, it's a system known as corvée labor. It wasn't a job. It was essentially a tax you paid with your physical body.
Which is so dark.
It is. The state simply claimed ownership of your time, your sweat, and your health for a designated period. And if we look at the underlying vulnerability of that kind of system, I mean, it is glaring.
How so?
Well, on paper, to the neighboring empires, this regime looks as hard as steel. It's a machine of pure efficiency. But its foundational logic is incredibly brittle because it willfully ignores the human variables.
Ah, I see.
A massive social structure built entirely on coercion with no pressure valves for public grievance has absolutely no shock absorbers. When sufficient stress hits that kind of system, it doesn't bend. It shatters.
Man, hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
No shock absorbers, because
Yeah.
we are about to put that exact concept to the test. So that is the macro view, the grand, unfeeling corporate strategy of the empire.
Right.
Now I want to take you away from the imperial palace and zoom all the way down to the dirt, the micro view. Let me introduce you to the protagonists of our deep dive.
The heart of the story.
Exactly. We have a young woman named Meng Jiangnü and her new husband, Fan Zhiliang. In the context of the sources, they represent the ultimate thematic clash.
They really do.
On one side, you have the emperor's sweeping vision of national security and historical legacy. And on the other side, you have what the texts often describe as personal small happiness.
Yeah, that concept of small happiness is
Actually.
crucial here. It is the quiet, unremarkable joy of just existing.
Right.
Waking up, eating a meal with someone you love, tending to your own modest life. It is the exact opposite of grand imperial ambition.
And the state hates that, right?
Or absolutely.
Yeah.
Historically, the state has always viewed that kind of quiet, private satisfaction with deep suspicion, because a citizen who is content with their small happiness is a citizen who isn't eager to die for the state's glory.
Wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. And, well, the state made sure their quiet happiness did not last.
No, it did not.
They get married. They're in the absolute peak of the honeymoon phase. I mean, literally, less than 3 days after the wedding, there's a loud knock at the door.
The worst kind of knock.
It is the imperial equivalent of an aggressive corporate HR department, except they're holding spears.
Right.
They don't ask for volunteers. They don't offer a relocation package. They just grab the husband, Fan Zilling, slap him in irons, and forcibly draft him to go march hundreds of miles north to build the Great Wall.
Just devastating.
3 days, you haven't even finished the leftover food from the wedding feast, and the person you love most in the world is being dragged off to a labor camp.
And the sheer abruptness of it is what makes it so terrifying. It highlights the total powerlessness of the individual when the bureaucratic machine turns its eye on you.
Yeah.
Consider the mechanics of it. There is no appeal process. You can't file an extension. There is no 2 weeks notice to get your affairs in order.
They're just gone.
You are a biological cog, and the machine needs you in a different slot immediately. It is the psychological trauma of having your entire life trajectory erased on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Now, here's the detail from the text that absolutely cemented Meng Jiangnü as one of my favorite figures in history. Because her reaction is so incredibly pragmatic and honestly full of this brilliant deadpan exhaustion.
It's very relatable.
If this were a Greek epic, she would stand on a cliff and deliver a sweeping monologue to the gods about the tragedy of fate and the burden of duty.
But she doesn't.
Not her. The source material captures her underlying logic perfectly. Her stance is basically, look, defending against the northern barbarians is none of my business.
Right.
I do not care about the geopolitical strategy of the imperial border. Do you know what I care about?
Yeah.
My husband was dragged out of here in the middle of autumn, and he doesn't even have thermal underwear.
It perfectly distills the absurdity of grand political agendas when they crash into the reality of human biology.
Yes.
The emperor is sitting in a heated palace thinking about centuries of legacy. She is standing in an empty house thinking about the fact that her husband is going to freeze to death on a scaffolding because he was conscripted in his summer clothes. It reduces the entire imperial project to a logistical failure.
It completely deflates the pompous rhetoric of the empire.
Hmm.
So what is her solution? She doesn't just sit by the window and wait for a letter that is never going to come.
No, she takes action.
She sits down, she sews a heavy winter coat, packs a bag, and she starts walking. And I need you, sitting here listening, to understand the scale of this. We are not talking about a quick hike to the next village.
Not at all.
She embarks on a journey of thousands of miles across ancient, completely unforgiving terrain.
We really need to emphasize the physical reality of that journey. This is ancient China. There are no paved highways for peasants.
Right.
She is navigating mountains, crossing freezing rivers, dealing with bandits, wild animals, and starvation. For a lone woman to attempt this is an act of borderline insanity.
Yeah, it really is.
It tells you that she has been pushed past the point of rational self-preservation.
Exactly. Why does she do it? Because it is the absolute only piece of agency she has left. The state took everything else. They took her husband, her future, her security. The only thing she can control is putting one foot in front of the other to deliver a coat. It is the ultimate cross-country romantic tragedy.
It's a very striking image.
You can just picture this solitary, exhausted figure trudging through the snow, driven by nothing but a deeply practical need to keep her partner warm. It is a quiet, relentless defiance of the state's massive indifference.
And visually, as she travels further north, the environment itself becomes a metaphor.
Oh, how so?
She is leaving the agrarian society.
Yeah.
You know, the world of crops, villages, and small happiness, and entering the militarized zone.
Right, the landscape shifts.
Exactly. The landscape becomes harsher, colder, and increasingly defined with the brutalist architecture of the state. You are watching a slow-motion collision course between pure, irrational human empathy and absolute, calculated bureaucratic apathy.
Which brings us to the collision itself, the climax of the deep dive.
Here we go.
After months of walking, her feet bleeding, surviving on scraps, Meng Jiangnü finally arrives at the Great Wall. She finds the specific work camp where her husband's unit was assigned. She walks up to the construction supervisor, basically the ancient equivalent of a middle manager with a clipboard, and simply asks to see Fan Ziliang so she can give him these winter clothes.
And this is where the story delivers the darkest, most profoundly horrific punchline imaginable.
Yeah. The banality of the evil here is what really strikes you.
This is chilling.
The supervisor barely even registers her presence. He just looks at his ledger and casually says, "Oh, Fan Ziliang. Yeah, he died of exhaustion a while ago. We didn't want to stop construction to dig a grave, so we just tossed his body into the foundation, mixed him into the concrete, and built the wall over him."
Wow.
And then he's like, "Anyway, you need to clear the area. We have a quota to meet."
Let's unpack the horrifying logic of that supervisor for a second. He didn't do it out of mustache-twirling malice.
No.
He did it because of the KPIs you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
A dead worker is no longer producing labor. Therefore, the worker is now just dead mass. And mass takes up space. The wall requires mass to be filled. From a purely unfeeling, standardized perspective, throwing the body into the concrete is the most efficient use of resources.
That is so messed up.
It is the ultimate manifestation of your monopoly metaphor. The citizen isn't just expendable, they are literally consumed and digested by the infrastructure project. It is a terrifying literalization of treating people as raw material.
He is literally part of the brick snow. I just want you, at home or wherever you are, to put yourself in her shoes for 10 seconds.
It's unimaginable.
You've walked thousands of miles, you nearly died a dozen times, you are holding this handmade winter coat that you poured all your love and anxiety into, and some bureaucrat tells you that your husband is part of the masonry.
Yeah.
What is your next move? You can't ask for the body back, it's physically impossible, you can't file a grievance with the labor bureau because the system isn't broken.
Right. The system is working exactly as designed.
And the design is what killed him. She doesn't try to organize a labor strike. She drops to the dirt at the base of this massive towering wall and she just starts to cry.
But we have to be very careful not to misinterpret this crying.
Oh, definitely.
If you view this through a modern passive lens, it just looks like a woman breaking down in defeat. It looks like surrender. But in the context of the legend, it is anything but.
Oh, there's absolutely zero surrender here.
Right. This isn't just ordinary sadness. It is an explosive, volatile mixture of grief, profound helplessness, and pure concentrated rage against a fundamentally broken universe.
Yeah.
When a system strips you of every legal, political, and social avenue for justice, the only tool you have left in your inventory is your own visceral pain. Her crying is an act of absolute uncontainable protest. It is the sound of a human being rejecting the reality the state has forced upon her.
An act of uncontainable protest. Man, I love that framing, because here is where the legend leaves the realm of history and earns its mythological status. She is wailing at the base of this wall. Her crying is so filled with this concentrated, righteous rage that it transforms into a literal sonic weapon.
It's incredible.
It is a frequency of pure grief.
Yeah.
The earth under the work camp starts to shake. The mortar begins to crack, and before the eyes of these stunned, clipboard-holding supervisors, 800 miles of the Great Wall of China just spontaneously groans, fractures, and collapses into a mountain of rubble,
Just completely disintegrates.
revealing, among the debris, the bones of her husband. 800 miles.
It's a staggering image.
All because one woman, who just wanted to live a quiet life, was pushed too far by a system that calculated she didn't matter. It is objectively the most satisfying structural failure in the history of literature.
It is a spectacular cathartic moment. But since our job is to analyze the sources, we do have to address the elephant in the room.
Oh, the physics of it.
Right. If we look at this analytically, could sound waves, even from a massive crowd, let alone one exhausted woman, actually bring down a fortified earthen and stone structure? Scientifically, the structural integrity of ancient masonry isn't going to succumb to human vocal frequencies.
Right. I am pretty sure if you put this on a myth-busting show, the physics of human tears versus compacted earth would be debunked in about 4 minutes.
Exactly.
But I also think getting bogged down in the physics is entirely missing the point of why we are talking about it today. Like, why does the physics not matter? Why has this specific story, over all the other histories of the Qin dynasty, survived for over 2,000 years?
Because it was never about the physics.
Right.
It's a brilliant, enduring metaphor. The myth survives because the people who passed it down understood a fundamental truth about human societies. A government, or a corporation for that matter, that is entirely focused on its own metrics and its own expansion while treating humans like disposable concrete is building on a faulty foundation.
Oh, that's good.
They think they are building a fortress, but they are actually building a pressure cooker. The literal wall didn't fall from sound waves. But the story is a metaphorical representation of a regime losing its mandate of heaven, its legitimacy, and its stability.
Yeah.
Because it pushed the populace beyond the physical limits of human endurance. The wall falling is the system finally breaking under the weight of its own cruelty.
I want to circle back to the tech analogy we were debating earlier because I think it perfectly illustrates your point about the pressure cooker.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we view the emperor's grand infrastructure as a massive, heavily fortified computer network, then Meng Jiangnü's tears aren't just salt water. They are the ultimate computer virus.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Think about how a firewall works. You spend all your money and resources securing the perimeter to keep external threats out. In this case, the Jiangnü tribes.
Right.
But a firewall is completely useless if the threat is generated from inside the house.
I see where you're going.
The emperor was so obsessed with the external competitors that he completely ignored the internal user experience. By treating his citizens with such casual brutality, he introduced a fatal bug into his own operating system. And that bug, that undeniable, chaotic human suffering, was a virus that bypassed all the external armor and completely crashed the empire's servers from the inside.
That is a very sharp way to translate the concept for a modern audience.
Thanks.
A system's defense mechanisms are irrelevant if the vulnerability is baked into the source code. The state looked north and thought, well, that is where the danger is.
Right.
They failed to realize that by crushing Fan Zhiliang and dismissing Meng Jiangnü, they had manufactured an unstoppable force right in their own backyard. They dug their own grave while trying to build a wall.
So, as we sit here finishing our drinks, what does all this actually mean for us? Why should you, sitting right across from me listening to this deep dive right now, care about a woman crying at a pile of bricks a couple of millennia ago?
It's the ultimate question.
Because, if we're being completely honest, the architecture has changed, but the dynamics really haven't.
Not at all.
We are all still navigating sprawling, faceless bureaucracies. We all have to deal with automated systems, heartless corporate structures, or political regimes that prioritize their KPIs over actual people.
Their quarterly profit margins, their polling numbers.
Exactly. Their efficiency algorithms over breathing humans. We all know what it feels like to be treated like a line item on a spreadsheet or an employee ID number rather than a human being who might just need a little bit of grace or a warm coat.
And we all intimately know the profound, suffocating frustration of realizing that the system you are dealing with doesn't have a mechanism built into it to register your individual pain.
Yeah, that is the worst feeling.
When the customer service bot just loops, or the bureaucracy denies your claim based on a technicality, you realize you are screaming into a void that was specifically designed to be deaf.
Exactly. And that is why the story of Meng Jiangnü feels so incredibly validating today. It is a reminder that human emotion, grief, love, rage, is the one chaotic variable that these massive, rigid systems can never successfully model in their projections.
It just can't.
They can build their walls as high as they want, they can standardize the bricks, they can automate the emails, and they can ruthlessly enforce the labor quotas. But they can never truly account for the destructive, unpredictable power of someone who just genuinely gives a damn about another person.
Right.
The system always thinks it is completely indestructible, right up until the exact moment it shatters.
It is a comforting thought to know that the human spirit has that kind of latent power,
Yeah.
but I think we also have to view it as a cautionary tale. Because even in the legend, the cost of that victory was incredibly steep.
Oh, for sure.
The wall fell, the systemic abuse was exposed, but the tragedy couldn't be reversed. She still lost her husband. The damage was already done.
Yeah, that really is the dark, cynical humor of the whole thing, isn't it? You successfully bring down the entire company, but at the end of the day, you're still out of a job and the person you love is still gone.
The ultimate Pyrrhic victory.
Totally. But man, considering the odds she was up against, what a victory. It really does make you look at the towering structures in the world around us a little differently.
It absolutely does. And as I wipe down the bar and we wrap up today's deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to mull over before you head out into the night.
Lay it on us.
Take a hard look at the massive walls we are currently building in our own modern society. Whether they are inescapable technological algorithms, sprawling corporate monopolies, or rigid ideological divides. On the surface, they seem completely untouchable, perfectly engineered to maintain their own power and control. But if you walk right up to the base of those walls, and you listen closely beneath the noise of the profit metrics and the grand press releases, whose unheard voices are already compromising the concrete.
Damn. That really is the question, isn't it? Who is already crying at the base of the wall? Well, think on that while you settle your tab. We will see you on the next deep dive.